Good evening from Holyrood. Coming up on tonight's Representing Border.
So youth unemployment is now one of the biggest issues facing young people today.
We explore why so many teenagers and young adults are struggling to find work. And we'll look at the particular issues they face in our region.
Business in the south of Scotland is challenging.
So what can be done? One hospitality boss tells us what he thinks needs to change.
We don't have to go to university. We can take people raw from school and train them up in hospitality to be fantastic entrepreneurial people.
And councillors drop plans to explore whether a so-called tourist tax should be introduced in Dumfries and Galloway. Are our young people getting a raw deal? With fewer traditional starter jobs now available, it's tougher for them to get in the door. A recent review for the UK government has warned the lack of opportunities risks creating a lost generation. And that has a knock-on effect for our overall economy, especially in places like the south of Scotland, where younger folk can be tempted to leave to find more opportunities. But it's not all doom and gloom. Oliver Wright has been discovering the positive entrepreneurial spirit of the next generation.
At this event in Edinburgh, school pupils are getting the chance to show off their businesses. It's part of the Social Enterprise Academy, which gets young people into the entrepreneurial spirit by creating real companies with a social benefit.
And we've been selling like motivational stationery products. So we started off just selling like pencil cases, pens, pencils, and we've kind of expanded to do notebooks, tote bags, study bundles, lots of different things like that.
I think because a lot of it helps with confidence too. So it's something that you can bring into your life when you leave school as well.
And our prom bags, we rent them out for half of their retail price for such events that you might just need one bag for one night, such as our prom that's happening tonight.
So we've been getting to know residents from our local care home, and we've just finished doing podcasts with them.
Has it made you think about what you might want to do in the future?
Yeah, it's kind of twisting my head a little bit because now I want to do something like that when I'm older.
But of course, being an entrepreneur isn't all plain sailing, something the event planner for this conference knows all too well.
Sometimes as a founder, I speak to other people and I think becoming a founder is the most attractive thing right now. And I think business in the south of Scotland is challenging. So you have connection issues, you have the rural, you have networks, you have people not sometimes knowing where to go. So I think that an event like this, especially when it's delivered through schools, really starts kids off at that early age of knowing that business can be for them no matter whereabouts in the country they are.
The Scottish Government says it wants to remove the barriers into business and encourage more people to take on a start-up project. The First Minister was at this juice bar in Glasgow announcing his new initiative.
The First Minister's Startup Challenge is another of our interventions to try to encourage more individuals to think about going into business, and it's particularly aimed at young people starting out in their working careers with practical financial support to help young people develop business ideas and then to support them as they grow.
Growing the economy is at the top of the priority list for both the Scottish and UK governments. The idea is that with more thriving businesses, the country will have better job prospects, better public services and reduce poverty. In a debate at Holyrood today, new Cabinet Minister Stephen Flynn vowed to cut some of the red tape tying up entrepreneurs and encourage those building their own companies across Scotland.
Because be in no doubt, Scotland does start from a position of strength. Our nation is awash with investment and innovation, from the Saxford spaceport sat atop the very tip of the Shetland Isles in Uns to Centre Parks development down south by Hoyk.
But the Conservatives were less than complimentary about the SNP's record on the economy, accusing the government of strangling businesses with high tax.
And their failure to grow the economy means that despite Scots being the highest part of the tax part of the UK, only half of this gets to public services.
The country's economy, like the UK's, has been stuck in a period of meagre growth. Tonight, the SNP administration will be hoping that new initiatives will help give things a kick-start and help Scotland win a bigger piece of the economic pie.
Oliver Wright. Well, for more on why so many young people are struggling to find work and what can be done to support them, I spoke with Jack Anderson, a member of the Scottish Youth Parliament. Jack Anderson, over the weekend, your members voted for a motion expressing deep concern about the level of youth unemployment in Scotland. Just how worried are you?
So youth unemployment is now one of the biggest issues facing young people today. When we go out and speak to young people, they repeatedly tell us they're worried about their chances of getting a job, whether that's part-time work or full-time work when they're older. I think young people are told that if they work hard in life, they'll get on, whether that's at school, college or university. At the end of it, there'll be a job. And for too many young people now, we're seeing that's not the case. The Milburn Review shows that there's over 1 million young people in the UK now not in education, employment or training. That's 1 in 8 young people, which is incredibly concerning. And I think what's even worse is that by the end of the decade, they're saying that could rise to 1 in 6 young people. So it's really worrying and could leave a whole generation of young people being left behind.
That Milburn Review, obviously, just for viewers, the review by Alan Milburn for the UK government of, as you say, the activity or not of young people. But I just wonder, why do you think this has become such an issue, and what do you think are the main barriers for young people looking for work?
I think it's important to say that it's not young people's fault that this has happened. When we go out and speak to young people, they're telling us that they want to work and they are trying to work. Young people are putting in dozens, if not hundreds of applications and hearing nothing back or a rejection from an employer. So young people are trying to get a job. But I think it's a complex issue. Alan Milburn in his report suggests that the economy and jobs market has fundamentally changed from 10, 20 years ago. I think we're seeing a range of economic, technological and social factors that have contributed to the rise in youth unemployment.
And are you hearing about young people, leaving Scotland to look for other opportunities, leaving indeed the UK potentially to look for work elsewhere?
Unfortunately, yes. I think as part of my consultation, I found that over half of young people say that they felt they had to move away to get on and get a good job. Whether that's young people from rural areas moving to cities, whether it's people from our island communities moving to the mainland, or whether it's young people in Scotland moving to another country, we are seeing young people feeling they have to move away to get on.
And more than half, that's a pretty staggering figure. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a range of factors, but it probably comes down to a lack of jobs. Fundamentally, if young people in the communities they grew up in don't have a job, they feel they have to move away where there are more jobs. I think as well it comes down to poor pay and poor working conditions as well, and there are other countries where young people are more likely to want to move to where they feel conditions are better. So it is a disappointing picture, and I think there's action that can be taken on all these fronts to make the working conditions in Scotland and the job prospects better. So I think it's important to young people don't want to move away. Young people want to work here, but when there's no opportunities, they feel they have no option but to leave.
You mentioned the action being taken. What more do you think that the Scottish Government should be doing to help young Scots into work and make this a more attractive country, or communities more attractive for them to remain in?
So I think we acknowledge that this is a complex problem and there's no silver bullet, there's no one solution that's going to solve it. So I think we need action from across government, across the economy to see change and to kind of bring about the progress we're calling for. So we're needing schools to better prepare young people for work. We're needing colleges and universities to work with businesses to identify skill shortages and kind of close those gaps. We're needing the government to make hiring young people less risky and more attractive for employers. And we're needing employers to make the application process better by giving young people feedback, by getting back to them when they take the time to apply. So we're needing action on all these fronts. And I think when we start to do that, it's going to make the youth unemployment rate hopefully start to reduce and get more young people into work.
And as MSYPs, have you been engaging with the new Scottish Government now, and do you get the impression that they're listening and taking this on board?
So we're really lucky at the Scottish Youth Parliament. We work closely with the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish Government regularly on a wide range of issues. I think I'd obviously welcome a meeting with the Scottish Government to discuss this further. And I think it reflects our point that it is effective and better to work with young people on these issues. The decision makers in government didn't have this experience when they were growing up, when they were applying for their first job, because the market has changed. So we need to listen to young people, work with them to get the best solutions and the best policy outcomes in these areas.
Do you think that's a bit of an issue? You mentioned there about maybe a different perspective as adults. There's older people just now maybe just don't understand the problems facing young people. Like, Is that causing particular problems?
I think it does, and I think it comes back and reflects that wider point about how important it is to engage and work constructively with young people. We've seen that on a wide range of issues, that social media ban that's been talked about, it's important to get young people's perspectives on that. The phone ban in school, these are things that decision makers didn't have to deal with when they were growing up. So it's important to get young people's views. I suppose the passing of the UNCRC a couple of years ago reflects that and how important it is for decision makers across all levels to engage meaningfully with young people.
Well, we'll see whether they manage to do that, but for now, Jack Anderson, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Now, councillors have voted not to consult on whether to introduce a visitor levy in Dumfries and Galloway. The new tax would have seen an extra charge added for overnight stays in the region, both for tourists and local people. The council did carry out a survey which found most businesses, residents and visitors opposed the plans. And this afternoon they decided not to proceed with a formal consultation. People we spoke to in Dumfries had mixed views.
If you want to have gone on holiday, you'll need to pay the tax and everything, but Dumfries is a good place to come.
It's difficult at the moment to get them to come in because there's hardly no shops in the centre.
Everything's getting expensive nowadays, so what if it's just too much?
It would give the council and things a bit more money as well, and so they would be able to do a lot, they would probably be able to do a lot more.
The tax could boost the coffers in the council and to be spent in the town, but it could also be detrimental to tourism and chase the tourists away, so it's a balancing act really.
Well, for more on that decision and the barriers facing young people getting into work, I spoke with Stephen Montgomery. He's the Stranraer-based director and spokesperson for the Scottish Hospitality Group. Stephen Montgomery, why are you opposed to a visitor levy being implemented in Dumfries and Galloway?
Well, I think I'm opposed to it, or we are opposed to it, for a simple reason. It's not the right time for Dumfries and Galloway. You know, both ourselves at the Scottish Hospitality Group and the Association of Self-Caterers have made a really good argument. This is about businesses in Dumfries and Galloway who rely on an area of tourism and hospitality to keep the economy going, and we're therefore competing with other areas, you know, whether it be South Ayrshire who have rejected it, the Borders who are either rejecting it or maybe looking at it ahead, and Cumbria. We need people to turn left. We rely on our hospitality and tourism for jobs, our supply chain and young employment, for example. You know, we need to keep these people in the area.
So how much are you worried then that you mentioned other areas then that this could diminish Dumfries and Galloway in terms of how competitive it is as a tourist destination?
Well, I mean, we are a lovely part of the region of Scotland. We are, and everybody comes to that area, you know, for short stays. We're fighting with then South Ayrshire who have denied or have put this away. We're looking at the Borders, we're looking at Cumbria who aren't even thinking about it. So we want people to go left at Gretna. We do that. But we rely on tourism and hospitality in the southwest of Scotland for the simple reason Dumfries and Galloway, it's jobs, it's supply chain. We rely on everything that supports. Our high street shops, they rely on hospitality and tourism as well. So any money that goes on another tax is money lost in our high streets, and that's the simple answer to it.
You've called before for council in particular to invest in areas that you say would boost economic growth and attract visitors. They could argue, could they not, that this levy could be spent on bringing forward exactly the policies you want to see in place?
Yeah, but you've got to look at it the other side as well. You know, if you're going to bring in a policy like this, what is the negative effect to it? You know, you've got to do a SWOT analysis on it. You know, what's the income going to be? Let's take off, because there's VAT charged on it, take off the labour costs of the council to it, and then what's the final figure? Is that more beneficial to the fact that we're going to lose businesses who are already on the breadline at the moment because of the cost of employing people, the national insurance contributions, 20% VAT, all those kinds of things, and the backdoor costs of running a hospitality or tourism business at the minute? Are you really wanting to throw another tax, which is, and to be honest with you, it's a tax to fill a budgetary gap that's not coming from central government to finance local government? So there's a blame on both sides, one from central government and one from local authority. Don't implement this because you're going to ruin business.
You've just talked about some of the barriers when it comes to employing people. We've heard today from young people and the problems they face gaining employment. How big do you see those barriers being from a business point of view?
There is no doubt about it that there is those 18 to 24-year-old people who we know have a barrier to employment because of, again, as a UK government employment. Employing young people now has gone up by between 50 and 60% a year to employ those people. These people need a break. These people need, and hospitality gives them that first step in their career. Many people starting in hospitality, it teaches them the soft skills, it teaches them, you know, some people go on to have really great careers in hospitality, but we need those people to come into our industry. We need them to stay in Dumfries and Galloway. And governments on both sides of the border need to make that easier for us and make that more affordable.
So is this a particular issue in hospitality, as you say, somewhere where people maybe traditionally have got the first step on the ladder?
Yeah, it is. I mean, hospitality is labour-led. Let's face it, you can't go to a checkout, for example, an automatic checkout. You want to be served traditionally by somebody at the table. So you need X amount of people to run your restaurant. And personally, in our own place, whenever I had my place, we always took on 14, 15, 16-year-olds who had never had a job before, and we trained them up. And we saw the transformation in these young people, and it gave them the guidance steps then to go on to full-time employment, whether they go on to university or sometimes even come back from university to come back and work for us. So it's that first step on the employment ladder which matters most for our young people.
With that in mind, you talk about people staying or indeed coming back. We know that areas like the southwest in particular are losing young people as they look elsewhere for opportunities. What more do you think could be done, or what needs to be done, to try and retain people?
I think skills. Skills is one of the things we need to be looking at, and planning is another one. The tax that's put on secondary homes that employers are having to buy to accommodate people, for example, where we don't have recruitment in the southwest of Scotland. Skills funding to skill up our young people, whether it be through apprenticeships or whether it be our college courses. And you don't have to go to university. We can take people raw from school and train them up in hospitality to be fantastic entrepreneurial people. And those are the people who are going to be our hotel, restaurant owners of the future. And that's what we need them.
There's one issue that was raised with us earlier on was from young people about employers not getting back to them when they've applied for jobs. I know there's a lot for employers to do, busy people, but could they be doing more to encourage young people to keep going even if they're not in a position to offer them a job?
Absolutely. I mean, if anybody does apply for a job, it's only fair. They've taken the time as a young person or whoever age they are to apply for a job that's been advertised or just off the cuff. It's only manners, I think, for an employer to actually say, listen, we'll keep come in for an interview, or we'll keep your records in file, and should that position comes available, we will be back in touch with you. The last thing we want is, our people across the sector applying for jobs and hearing nothing back. They lose the will then, and then we lose them in the sector, and they maybe go to work in a supermarket or they go to work in another career.
The Scottish Government has a debate at Holyrood today about the wider economy. How do you think this new government's doing early days?
I think it's nice to see that no one party has a majority. So they're going to have to work with each other. So it's going to be interesting. We have engagement with Cabinet coming up. We have engagement with all parties coming up, which is good to see. New people come into the Parliament, so we're looking to make those connections with them too. But I think both governments have got a part to play here. The UK government, certainly we've got a campaign just going on now about lower the VAT, for example, from 20% to 10% for hospitality, and then the Scottish Government, they've got a part to play in this as well with the non-domestic rates issues, because we have seen some horrendous revaluations come out, and certainly for the southwest of Scotland as being one of those people, one of those areas. So they all have their part to play, and today it'll be really interesting to hear what backbenchers, for example, are going to ask the First Minister, and I know we've got a couple of questions in on that.
Fantastic. Well, indeed, we'll see what they say, see how the next 5 years pans out. For now, Stephen Montgomery, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Now, new figures show greenhouse gas emissions dropped in Scotland by 1% in 2024. Stop Climate Chaos Scotland, a coalition of more than 70 environmentally focused organisations, said it demonstrates progress isn't being made nearly quickly enough. In the Holyrood Chamber this afternoon, the Climate Action Secretary accepted her government needs to move faster when she was challenged on the issue by the Greens, but she rejected claims from Reform UK that the push to reduce emissions was harming the economy.
Presiding Officer, these figures tell us something important, that progress continues to be made in Scotland, but we must accelerate the transition. We're bound by law to take action on reducing our emissions, but it's also an economic and social imperative. The prizes are absolutely worth it.
Today is not a day for celebration, because overall our carbon footprint in Scotland is actually going up. It's not going down, and it should be going down faster and faster.
When we do see disappointing results, 1% reduction for 2024 is not what it should be. We should be accelerating faster.
I massively disagree that this is an economic opportunity. Rather, it's a massive economic cost for Scotland. It's driving expensive energy, it's driving deindustrialisation, and we've seen this with the closure of Grangemouth.
But for Duncan Massey, with respect, to stand up as a representative of the North East of Scotland and say that there is no economic benefit to his constituents, to my constituents, the North East of Scotland, is frankly astounding.
At Westminster, the Border's Conservative MP John Lamont called for better cooperation between NHS services on either side of the border. The new UK Minister for Health and Social Care said work to improve the sharing of patient records was already underway.
Some residents in the Scottish borders are registered with GP practices in Northumberland, but their medical records are not always shared properly between NHS services in England and Scotland. Now, the SNP government refuses to allow reciprocal care, so will the Minister urgently work with the Scottish Government to ensure my constituents can be properly treated as closer to home as possible?
NHS England is working closely with NHS Scotland to improve the compatibility of patient records. I believe that they must do much more, and I'd be happy to meet with him to discuss further.
And back here at Holyrood, backbench First Minister's questions saw John Swinney urged to address a warning from children's charity NSPCC Scotland that babies are still waiting years for a permanent home. South Scotland MSP Duncan Dunlop described it as a baby blind spot in the care and justice system. Meanwhile, Carol Mochan, who also represents the region, challenged Mr Swinney on support for carers.
The reality of this wait is that babies and young children are left without the stability of a permanent home, and those children are then likely to struggle to attach, as well as give and receive love in later life. So can I ask the First Minister, what action will this government take now to help those mothers and babies in need?
There is an intense focus on trying to support families, and it's reflected also in the government's commitment around whole family support to ensure that families in difficulty are supported. They're supported to stay together where it is safe and sustainable to do so.
This week is Carers Week, and this year's report found that almost half of people caring in Scotland do not feel that their communities are carer friendly. Does the First Minister recognise more needs to be done to support unpaid carers in their communities?
The Government is investing over £88 million in local carer support through Local Authority Carers Act funding, and that's designed to be distributed at local level to meet the varying circumstances that will exist in different parts of the country.
And that's all from us tonight. We'll be back at the later time of 11:20 on Thursday, and I hope you can join us then. But for now, thanks for watching and good night.